So, according to a study, like a Xerox white paper that was done in 2008, approximately 10 trillion pages were printed in the United States. Worldwide, about 53 trillion pages were utilized. And from that point on, the white paper actually went and said for the next 5 years, paper usage would grow exponentially by 3% annually. So what's wrong with paper? Well, essentially, it's very expensive. It's becoming more and more expensive to utilize. Right now, it measures almost about 15% of a company's annual revenue. The cost of toner has gone up dramatically. The cost of storage of all these documents, it's real estate, it's become extremely expensive to maintain. You have issues of security and compliancy. Documents go missing, and then of course you have to, in many cases, as a paper-based document, you have to find somewhere to save it for up to 7 or 8 years, based on government regulations. So, according to AMR, about 20, they're stating, according to this GXS white paper that was printed in 2008-2009, they estimate only about 20% of all invoices, purchase orders are automated at this point in time. Another 20% are semi-automated. In other words, somebody's using QuickBooks or Peachtree or Simply Accounting, printing the document or is attaching it as an email and getting to you electronically. But on your side, you have to manually intervene on that. So we call that like a partial electronic transaction. And today, most of the small things that corporations order, toner, paper clips, pens, that's still typically done either by the phone or a fax document, or it's still done fairly manually. All right. So, what's wrong with processing a paper document is, fundamentally, there really isn't anything wrong with it other than it takes time. There are issues that you have to deal with on a regular basis, like data entry error rates. Now, 2 to 5% data entry error rate is quite sort of average for most processing right now. That doesn't seem like it's a lot, but when you're putting in 20, the quantity of 20 instead of 2, and the shipment goes out, and then you've got to return 18, there's a lot of cost that's associated with these kinds of errors. There's also, again, compliancy issues, again, higher transport costs, as I was saying, and that also may result in a slower recovery of receivables and inaccurate measurement of your inventories at any given time. So all of these have a significant cost for your organization. So how much does it really cost to process a document? So I'm going to show you a study that was done and by Purchasing Today, and some experts actually will estimate it'll be between $100 and $150. Anybody agree with that? And what they're saying is it doesn't matter whether you're ordering a $30 worth of paper clips or a $500,000 piece of specific equipment. That's the cost. That's a lot of that has to do because larger companies probably have more overhead. So, but there are other studies I looked at, and some say 96, some say 150, some say 190. It's all over the place, but it depends on what you're measuring. So I'm going to give you a real-world example, I think, in your industry, which I think will work for you. And it's something that you might be able to understand. This, I pulled off the manufacturing.net website. It's a paper called Eliminating Waste in Supply Chain Management. And this is a case study of a company that did 80 purchase orders. Now, it's all turnaround. It's a purchase order and the invoice. But this is what they measured in order for them to come up to a cost of roughly $26 an order. They measured the processing of the purchase order, how many minutes they took, what the average cost was, the error correction process, the checking the inventory, the invoice, the payments, the stamps. I mean, they measured everything along the way. Now, is that a reasonable cost for you in your industry?
How many line items do you think that was?
Actually, I think when I looked at this, it was about an average of about 6 line items.
Okay.
This is a small to medium kind of manufacturer in their example. Any questions on that?
Am I understanding that correctly? It's $1,877 to do that entire process?
That's their total cost for 80 purchase orders.
80, oh, for 80 purchase orders.
Shoot, I thought it was 1. I was going to agree with it.
So let's talk a little more about the environment and the effect of paper on the environment, because I'm sure that's one of the other reasons you came here, right? It wasn't about saving costs in the corporation. So this is an initiative that is being sort of put forth by the government in Ontario, and what they're trying to do is reduce the amount of paper that they are utilizing in their organization right now, throughout the government. So their goal is to reduce paper by about 50%, saving almost $7 million. Ideally, they'd like to reduce a whole bunch of pieces of equipment, printers, faxes, print servers along their throughout their whole network, saving approximately reducing 16,000 pieces of equipment out of 15,000 pieces of equipment out of their processing environment, and reducing and centralizing the fax machines throughout their organizations, thus saving about $640,000. One of the things that they're really great at is actually printing all kinds of newsletters within their organizations, and they're actually looking at flipping that to become more PDF, more electronic, and trying to eliminate as much paper as they can from there. So this is a very interesting initiative, because in the end, what they hope to do is basically save enough energy to power 2,767 homes for a year, or approximately $2 million, and it'll reduce the CO2 emissions by about 6,750 tons annually. So the reduction of paper means you're going to basically have less paper produced, which means there's going to be savings of power, savings of water, and saving of CO2 emission into the atmosphere. As a complementary program, they initiated an EWaste program that supports environmental sustainability. So they're trying to recycle all their computers, their printers, fax machines, to save even more. So this is a study by GXS that basically, this is something that they measured in 2009, and they said that for the 68 million, sorry about that. For all the transactions that they processed during the 2008 year electronically, that means through EDI or XML, anything that was transmitted over their network, that there was a direct relationship to the amount of CO2 that was pumped into the air. 68 million pounds. It's basically the equivalent of taking 6,200 cars off the road for a year. The savings of trees, of almost 300,000 trees, and the total energy consumption was sufficient to power 5,000 homes for a year. They estimated that if all the transactions that were conducted in business, which would probably be about 80 times that, actually, or 100 times that would be the actual savings on the environment, basically. It would be a lot less CO2 emissions, a lot more savings of power, and one of the biggest benefits would be the savings of trees, basically, almost 3 million.
So how many documents did they process? Did they say?
They weren't actually very particular about the amount of transactions. I don't think that they want to be very specific about how many documents they. But you might want to look up the white paper. It's called Sustainability in B2B Outsourcing. It's by GXS. It's readily available on the internet. So, how can you do your part? And how do you save energy? How do you save money in your organization? So basically, there's 3 things that you can do, and I think most of you have done the first thing. You've tried to implement an EC strategy or EDI or XML as a gateway to your processing environment. A second option is to experiment with document management and bring that in-house and try and eliminate as many manual interventions as you do right now. Or a third option is to partner with a third-party service that might be able to bring you some economies of scale. So let's look at the pros and cons of an electronic commerce initiative or EDI initiative. And basically, just to keep it short, it reduces the amount of manual intervention, it increases the accuracy and speed of processing, and it increases your internal efficiency and potential profitability. The con of that is that all your partners will either not implement, can't afford it, it's not a focus for them, they just kind of want to do business the way that they've been doing it forever and ever and ever. And so not everybody will comply to your corporate strategy. Is that a fair assessment? So pros and cons of document management are that it won't eliminate your manual interventions, but it could significantly decrease what you're doing, like as a rekeying process, basically. It doesn't require major change to the business process, and it allows for quick access to records to retrieval, because you don't need to put it in filing cabinets and storage. Some hospitals in the U.S. have actual 2 or 3 stories of their hospitals wings associated with storage of paper, which is real estate gets very, very expensive. The cons of it is it's extremely expensive. As an example, one of our seats for what we use as an OCR interface will cost about $15,000 a seat, and before you get an ROI on it, you'll have to do like 40,000 documents. So it's very costly to bring in and to maintain. The other thing about OCR and ICR, it's not 100% compliant because it's based on the quality of the document that you're getting, that you're receiving, and not, as you know, we process a lot of fax documents. We've seen them all. And it's also there's a relationship to cost regarding whether you just want to save the document, or do you want to save it with an index of some sort, or do you want to save the document with full content? And there's different costs associated with both of those options. Does anybody here have a document management system in place?
We looked into it, it was way too expensive.
It's too expensive.
It was millions.
Right. So do you agree with kind of this assessment?
What makes it so expensive?
It's the cost of the software.
Oh, the cost of software?
The cost of the software and the maintenance costs. Strictly, that's it. That's what it's all about. And it's still a bit of a manual process because somebody's going to have to scan the document in, or you're going to have to find a way to get it in electronically and then run it into the indexing process.
One comment. Our company, the legal department, uses this, and what we're trying to do is jump on that with them. So I don't know if any other companies have that going on, but if your legal department is already doing this, you might want to see if you can jump in and take advantage of it.
For sure. Somebody else had their hand up.
No, our legal department has a document management system, but to the slide's point, it's expensive to apply across.
Yeah.
And we've looked at other kind of halfway document management stuff, like trying to use SharePoint to accomplish the important 8 or 20% or 80%, whatever that works. And the part that's missing are the processes you have to come up with to make the tool work. Since the software is lacking in features, you have to come up with your manual intervention or your custom development, and that's the other part that comes.
But next year that software will get better, and you'll pay more. And that's the way the industry is. And in fact, document management you have to split up into two very separate pieces of business. One is the document management aspect of it, which is the PDF document of the TIFF or the JPEG or whatever. That's the image management. The other is content. Do you want to actually grab the data out of it, and how do you want to extract that data? Do you want to use an OCR process? Do you want to retype that in? So there are different options. If you want to use OCR as part of your document capture process, that's where it really gets expensive, because an OCR engine will cost $100,000 or $200,000. And in some cases, the manufacturer will actually charge you, after you buy the software and pay the maintenance cost, they'll actually charge you per document as you're scanning it in and processing it. So it can get to be an extremely expensive alternative for you. Okay? So from our perspective, I know I'm a little biased. We're a third-party provider, but I think if you want economies of scale and you want to sort of jump to the forefront of the latest technologies, rather than buy and make a large investment in things that, if you're manufacturers and you're distributors, just do that. You don't need to be IT people at the same time. Let somebody else be your IT resource. So also, you don't need to hire specific individuals to perform these tasks. You don't have to buy new equipment. As I mentioned, it gives you the ability to open up and implement the latest technologies. Everybody's heard of the cloud? So you can get right there with a really, really minimal investment. And it definitely promotes flexibility and adaptability. Anybody here working for third party right now? So what you should look for in a third party, I'm trying to really make this short because I have some demos to provide you to show you some of the things that us as a company can do to streamline the paper in your organization. But what you should look for in any third party, it doesn't have to be us, just any third party that you might be looking at, you should make sure that they have lots of expertise in what your back end is, whether it's EDI, whether it's whether you're doing XML, or whether your ERP is a SAP or JD Edwards. Make sure that that organization has sufficient experience with integration into those back ends. You make sure that if you're going out to a broader range of partners, that the company's able to reach out to your partners, recruit them properly, give them proper information, and sort of make it conciliatory for them to come on board and adapt to this particular strategy. Also, make sure that the company is able to be. You should be very, very. I should say, should be very adamant about specific SLAs. Delivering the document within an hour, within 3 hours, and making sure that they have the measurements to back up the delivery of these documents to you. Key capabilities. Right now, all third parties out there, every organization, whether it's us or SPS Commerce or GXS or Sterling, which is now IBM, or Epicor, everybody's got a web. The web is the panacea, right? It's going to solve all our issues, right? It's a little sarcasm. But everybody should have web services in some sort. It's not only to capture the data, but maybe from an auditing or reporting process, or maybe the ability to give some specific partners the ability to upload a data file, a CSV file, an XML file, and to be processed directly online. So that way you can get your order in through one of these web services without people having to actually rekey information. Make sure they have proper audit trail and an opportunity for your customer support team to interface with what's going on, like how the data is being processed. So in your industry, I think a fax or an email to EDI or a fax to email to XML service would almost be mandatory, because we've been here for 2 days, and I think a lot of people's problem is that they're still getting paper, right? Is that a fair assessment for you guys? So in your industry, I think you should be looking for somebody who's, and not somebody who's been around for 2 or 3 years, it's somebody who's been around for 5 or 10 years, who understands fax to EDI is not it's not a very basic service. Fax to EDI comes with a lot of compliance issues and audit trail issues. You need to be able to pass the original document so that people can refer to it. You need to have proper workflow. You need to have proper timing. So, in other words, you need to track when the document came in on the fax server, when it got processed, when it got delivered to you, so that you can properly maintain the SLA agreements that you have in place with your partners. Everybody should have the ability to do business rule validation. Once the data is extracted from that document, it's a huge disservice for companies to just pass you data that is either not EDI compliant with your process, first, and then second, does not maintain the integrity of your business process, because it's worthless. It just means that you're still going to do the same thing that you're doing today. Is you're going to have to interact with problems once they become a problem in your order entry system. So if you can weed out everything up front, get all the business rules done, what's going to be delivered to you is a clean transaction. As I mentioned, workflow is very, very important. Audit trail, very, very important. And compliancy with SOX, HIPAA. I'm not sure if there's any compliancy programs within the distribution and manufacturing. I'm not really aware of that right now. But in other industries, like in the healthcare, HIPAA is very, very, data encryption, proper message delivery. These kinds of things are critical in some other industries. Again, integration and experience with your popular ERP packages is very important, and not only for you, but for your partners that you're trying to bring on, because many of them probably have something like QuickBooks. They're running with QuickBooks. They may want to become EDI compliant, but that one step getting them is not. It could be very expensive. A lot of training. They have to hire people. If you can just get them a little, give them a little bump and give them a way to integrate QuickBooks into some sort of flat file that can be processed by a third party and then converted to an EDI transaction. Very small investment, that these people become EDI compliant almost overnight, basically, at a very, very small cost. So it's worthwhile to work with somebody who knows how to integrate QuickBooks, how to integrate Peachtree, how to integrate all the Sage products like Simply Accounting and Business Vision and Mass 90 and all these other products. Again, application integration for legacy systems. Anybody here still running COBOL? Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
One. I'm an old COBOL programmer, so if you're looking for obviously EDI compliancy testing is very important in your industry. We do a lot of testing, and it's not as easy as everybody thinks it is. Even companies that are EDI compliant that test with other companies that are EDI compliant, when we perform testing, it is sometimes a major issue where people just don't get it right. So you need to be able to do that in a very conciliatory fashion to make sure that people understand that the EDI spec is clear, it's concise, and it's easy to understand for everybody during the testing process. And I think one of the most important things that everybody should have access to as many ways of communicating back and forth with the clients would be your typical VAN, which most of you probably do, right? Most of you have a VAN interface. AS2 FTP email or other proprietary scenarios. But I know in your industry, probably VAN and AS2 is probably it's kind of very common, right? And I think also what is very interesting, if you're going to pick a third party, make sure that they have a program which is SaaS related, which is software as a service, and it's pay as you go. No monthly minimums. Let the individuals embark on this without them having to really worry about paying them $100 monthly minimum and worrying about the size of their transaction. It's not what I would say. I keep using that word conciliatory, but if you really want your partners to come on board, you really have to make it worthwhile for them to come on board. So any questions up to here? No? Okay, so I'd like to switch over. I'm going to switch over there. I'd like to do 3 demos of some of the services that we have. I know some of you have come by the booth. I'm not sure. Has somebody seen the demos I've shown at the booth? So I'm going to redo one, and then I'm going to show you 2 other products, 2 other services that we have that you may want to look at when you're evaluating with other third parties. I'm saying I'd certainly like it if you all came here, but I'm not doing this as a service to Faxinating Solutions. But I'd like to switch over to my computer, and I'm going to do a couple of demos from here.